The NFL draft is fast approaching, and with it, a new wave of talented linebackers will soon join the ranks of the IDP stars, leading your teams to fantasy success. But which linebackers have what it takes to become the next big thing? And how should you be ranking the linebackers in this class? We've got the answers right here on the IDP After Show.
This is the IDP After Show.
Hey, Jase Abbey here, and I'm bringing you the 2025 Rookie Linebacker Preview episode, where ahead of the draft, we will be breaking down and ranking the top talent at what most of us appreciate is the most important position in IDP. And really, who better to have me with on this episode than the IDP Show's Mr. Linebacker himself, Mike Woellert. Mike, how's it going?
What's up, dude? Everything's good. Yeah, just I always say this, it's like the Super Bowl ends, and then next thing you know, we get the wave of free agency, and then the draft is right around the corner. So this was a fun class to evaluate, looking at the all 22 and of all these players. And I got to tell you, heading into putting these together, to putting the evaluations together, I didn't think there were going to be as many linebackers, but this was actually a pretty fun group to evaluate, an athletic group of linebackers to evaluate. So it ended up actually being a pretty fun group to look at and evaluate.
Yeah, sure did. It sure did. And Mike, we're going to go through your top 5 linebackers today in order from the number 5 spot, counting down to the number 1. And we want to emphasize that this is a kind of a preview, or a tease, if you will, of your rookie linebacker article, which dropped over at the idpshow.com a few days ago. Mike, we'll circle back later and talk more about the article itself at the end of the show. But I want to touch on just how damn comprehensive it is. Strengths, weaknesses, stats, measurables, RAS, videos. It's got everything anyone needs to know about these rookie linebackers, right?
Yeah, I included a little bit of a bunch of everything. All 22 clips. Like I said, evaluations, strengths, weaknesses. It hits it all. And like I said, I think I ended up ranking 10, but I think I ended up writing up 17 total. So give yourself some time, get some coffee, or if you're in the UK, get some Broville. What is it, Broville? Some and enjoy a nice hearty drink while you sift through the linebackers.
So starting with the number 5 linebacker, the first of what I think will be a surprise compared with consensus. Talk to us about Shaun Dolac, Mike.
Yep, Shaun Dolac. One, snubbed at the combine. I was really hoping he was going to hit the combine, so he was snubbed at the combine. He hit my radar probably, once I start looking at some of the linebackers. I usually hit up PFF, take a look at the scores, take a look at tackle numbers. And I mean, as soon as I saw Dolac's tackle numbers, I'm like, okay, well, dude, there's one guy. Gotta look at him. Luckily I was able to kind of watch some of his Northern Illinois tape, and dude is just a tackle machine. Was just kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. When I was originally writing up the article, just kind of lining it up, I think I originally had him at maybe my 7 or 8. Right. I'm like, small school guy, still Buffalo, but still somebody who is draftable. Dude goes to his pro day with a chip on his shoulder, which is fantastic. Pro day runs a friggin' 4.5 and a 1.58 10-yard split. I'm like, okay. A 6.93 cone and a 4.2 shuttle. I'm like, welcome to my top 5. I'm like, all right, welcome to my top 5. 35-inch vertical and a 35-inch vertical, 10-foot broad, a RAS of 9. And I'm just like, okay, welcome to my top 5. This guy I think just screams underdog, chip on the shoulder. And if that's how he enters the league, then I don't know. I think he has NFL talent on him. I mean, 19.5% tackle rate in his during his 24 season.
Mm-hmm.
Almost 2,300 career snaps. So he has the snaps. He can play. Sneaky speed on tape, and boy, did it translate to the pro day. Just all over the field, in the opposing field's backfield, 19 tackles for loss. Really good instincts. I think he's got really good versatility because he had 6 interceptions and 5 defended passes in last season. 12 career sacks, so he can get to the quarterback. Really good work ethic. So again, snub from the combine, big pro day, which I think does elevate him, a draft stock. I think maybe he would have gone undraftable, but now, I mean, I think he's definitely on the radar for a day 3 pick. His size, he's 6'1", 225, so a little undersized. Some of that lateral quickness, maybe sometimes a limit is side to side, but I think with his instincts and his angles, I think it kind of makes up for some of that lateral quickness. And then I think he'll get a knock for playing in the MAC, but I think with the transfer portal, I think some of the competition is still leveling out, but I think playing in the MAC might hurt him compared to some of those other prospects that are available in the draft. But I don't think the MAC is as weak as it used to be. I think it's still a pretty solid conference, and I think it turns out good football players. So like I said, I think his metrics dispel some of the concerns about his athleticism. So I think the pro day, like I said, did it. I think he's quickly becoming a my guy. He's just that underdog, and I think he gives me kind of Terrell Bernard vibes, production, average size, but athleticism. So yeah, he's my LB5 right now. I really liked what I've seen from him.
I said to you before this show, Mike, I think last week, in fact, the more I watch of Dolac, the more I like. And as I've watched, what really hits home is firstly how effectively he diagnoses plays.
Yes.
Secondly, has the athleticism to get to the right spot at the right time. And finally,
immediately. Yep.
He's got the technique and the sound fundamentals to make the play once he's there. Very little gets away from him. And that shows up, I think, against the run and the pass. You mentioned the tackle numbers, led the nation in tackles, 95th percentile in tackle rate, and missed only 5% of his tackle attempts, which is the best of any of the 5 guys, I think, that we're going to be talking about tonight. One of the guy comes close, but 5% is the best number. Yep. There was a particular game, I know you'll have seen it, against I think it was East Michigan, which I think showed a lot of what Dolac's game's about.
Yep.
In that game, 11 tackles, which wasn't out of the ordinary. I think you mentioned the Northern Illinois one, which he had 17.
Yeah, I think he had double-digit tackles every game for the most part. But he was in that 8.5, 9 range. So I mean,
that's it,
all over the place.
And in that game, I say 11 tackles. East Michigan came away with 2 picks. One of which he returned for a touchdown. But it was the return, I think, that showed me a little bit about what he has as an athlete, I suppose, that we don't always see when we're watching him as a linebacker. He broke a bunch of tackles, skipped around the first guy, hurdled the second, and then showed us some of that vision, some of that football savvy that we're speaking about, where he reversed field and used some of his blockers to help him to get into the end zone. It was just really impressive stuff.
Yep.
So if anyone listening to this hasn't seen any of Dolac and you would just watch one play, please go and watch that one because it's fun, if nothing else. Like you said, Mike, the pro day numbers were great, especially the bench, the 3-cone, the 40, the 10-yard split, as you mentioned. But yeah, the measurables are a little concern, height, short arms. But I will say, I tend to agree with you on this point about the level of competition he's been playing against. He wasn't quite as proficient or as capable in pass coverage in those games, I guess, Ohio, Missouri, etc. But he was just as productive as a tackler, right? He was just as active in that sense. So, I get the sample size is really small when we're talking about the top level competition that he's played against. But how he played in those games, it's enough of a sample size to give me hope, encouragement, if you like, that he can kind of transition to the NFL. That said, as is the case with most of these guys, and I know this is a point you agree with, Mike, I'm using Dolac as the first example of what kind of tends to apply to the rest of them, really. But I don't think he's ready to hit the ground running. IDP managers are going to have to be patient. This is something that I know you and I have both been preaching in recent years. That's just the way the NFL is now. He's going to take some adjustments.
Yes.
But I will say last year, kind of like contradicting myself, last year, circumstances for these rookie linebackers tended to dictate snap volume and therefore production more than talent did. We saw guys like Tyrese Knight, Omar Spate's probably the best example of that, play a lot more than expected. And that's because they landed in relatively soft spots, or the spots that they landed in became relatively soft. Other players got injured. You can never tell what's going to happen. But yeah, Mike, last question on Dolac then before we move on. That pro day could mean he goes a little earlier than he would have before, as you said. That might mean he ends up with a team that is maybe a little bit more linebacker needy. Is there a team that you'd like to see him land with?
I think if he ended up on the Raiders, I wouldn't be mad.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he ended up maybe on Tampa, I probably wouldn't. I wouldn't hate that. But yes, I think no matter the team he lands on, I think like you said, what we've been seeing with some of these linebackers, no matter how they're heavily touted, they're not hitting the field right away. I mean, a great example of that was Edgerrin Cooper, highly touted linebacker. I mean, you saw it on tape last year. Standout linebacker, fantastic, athletic. I think it took him till about midseason, almost, kind of toward that end of the season for him to really play a little bit more. So I think we're seeing that a little bit more. But what I'm going to be really interested in, 2024 was the first season that players could wear the green dot. It was the first year with communication helmets. So I'm going to be really interested to see if the linebackers who wore a green dot are valued a little bit more because they're in the trenches. They're relaying all the information. They're taking in the information. They're spitting it out to the players. They're getting everybody into the right position. So that's a key. That is a very, very important attribute for a player to take in, diagnose, get the player in, and not only pre-snap, but pre-snap, and then seeing, okay, now in the huddle, like, okay, now you got to do this, and almost audibilizing before the snap. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to see if the green dot linebackers in college are valued a little bit higher than maybe in years past.
And that, I will say, is you've given me the perfect segue into the next player. When you're talking about leadership, the next guy on our list was, I think, the only linebacker to participate in every drill at the combine. Someone I'm a big fan of, was a leader in college. Introduce Demetrius Knight for us, Mike.
Yeah, Demetrius Knight. South Carolina South Carolina could. I think they're going to they could turn into first round players, but I don't think Knight or Kennard maybe make it in the first round. But South Carolina had some athletic defensive players at the combine. But yeah, Knight 4.58 40, a little higher on the 40-yard split, but a good shuttle and a decent 3 cone. So made the move to linebacker. Made the move to linebacker in college, spent 4 years with I think Georgia Tech, 270 total snaps, but transferred to Charlotte in 23, 96 tackles with Charlotte, and then 24 transferred to South Carolina, where, like you said, really emerges as defensive leader, captain, most outstanding senior, the MVP of the defense award, ended up with only 526 snaps, I think, total in 2024. A little bit lower on the career snaps because they really kind of only emerged over the last couple of years. So, but a 15.6 tackle rate over those 526 snaps, 82 tackles, 57 solos, 8 TFLs. His 4.58 really was on display. I don't know if anybody has seen, but my God, the play he made on Jalen Milroe, this sack, he's got to be 10 yards away from him and just friggin' closes in on him like he's the Terminator going after John Connor and just friggin' just gets to him. So that was like the first play that I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fun guy to watch. And he was, athleticism and range. Again, he's got good instincts, got good IQ. He was a quarterback, so he's got the smarts. of a quarterback. Really good with pre-snap reads, play recognition. His stands out. Has a thick, powerful frame. I think he can play in really any scheme. I think he's scheme versatile. And again, that leadership, a vocal leader, the 2024 team captain. His first year of South Carolina was a team captain. So he's mature. He has a good ethic. It resonated in the locker room. So I think he's going to resonate with scouts kind of looking for a character guy. A couple of weaknesses or areas of improvement. Again, some of that lateral agility. He's athletic for his size, but sometimes that agility, some of that lateral agility. And I think that even kind of showed in his within that three cone, a little higher of a three cone. Coverage skills, decent in that short zone. A lot of these linebackers are really good in short zone, but you don't want them really to get into man-to-man. And then he's kind of got fooled a little bit with eye discipline. So, but I think also one of the things, he's going to be 26 by the end of his rookie season. So he's a little bit on the older side than some of these linebackers. I think he's actually older than Jack Campbell, who I think Jack Campbell is entering his third year already. So his age might limit that long-term upside and maybe push him down some draft boards, but talent is there for sure. He kind of reminded me a bit of Devin Lloyd, a downhill, good, decent coverage instincts, a gap disruptor. And like I said, his tape against Alabama and Missouri were really good, really stood out to me. Uses length well. I think his combine probably will push him into more of a day 2 pick. But I think there's a lot to like here. And I think he's just outside of my top 3. But like if you're breaking him into tiers, I think he's like that top of tier 2. I actually posted a kind of a rookie flow chart on my personal Patreon or personal Substack, MikeWoellert.substack, where I kind of have a flow chart of where you can expect to take offensive players and rookie and defensive players in the round of your rookie draft. And I think I have them right around as like a round 3 rookie draft pick. So Knight is definitely pretty good player. Definitely really stood out to me.
Yeah, and that sounds about right in terms of the range, I would say. And I'm a big fan of Knight. I like a lot of what I see on tape. Great athleticism, as we saw at the combine. Hustles hard. I know you mentioned some of the criticisms about his eye discipline in coverage. I see that too. I wonder whether that's more of a consistency thing or a lack of consistency than it is just a case of whether he, black and white can or can't get it done, because it's just not evident for long periods, and then all of a sudden it will show up and it's quite glaring. So no pun intended. But yeah, the eye discipline, I suppose, is a concern. And I guess, the short area quickness too, you're right to bring that up. And, he might struggle against some of the more shifty backs, but I think he's a pretty, and I hesitate to use the word well-rounded, because I don't really think any rookie is well-rounded. But compared to his peers, he's got a little bit of everything. I think that will stand him in good stead. The athletic testing didn't blow anybody away, but nothing was poor, and it was good enough. The 40 was good. The shuttle was good. I think only the vert was poor. That kind of stood out, but I can live with that. But
again, you're not jumping.
Yeah, you're
not jumping to make tackles. You're not like jumping the line of scrimmage to make a tackle. So
yeah,
but like it's the shuttle, I think, is what I think also helped him too, because a lot of the linebackers, they're kind of shift. They're kind of shifting. They're maybe not as he may not be as like bendy or bendy when it comes to pass rushing, but his shuttle has definitely kind of gives him a little bit of a boost. And like I said, that burst with the 40 kind of translates to gets a good burst, and that burst just has a good burst, a decent split, but his closing speed has been really jumped out.
Mm-hmm. And there's 2 other things that I want to mention on him. One is inability to beat blockers. I see a lot of this where people are talking about Knight, and there are some examples of that, but it's not as glaring to me as it seems to be to others. I don't think that's going to stop him from earning a role, to be honest with you. The bigger concern for me, I suppose, would be tackling. And I'll again argue against myself here. 11% missed tackle rate. it's not terrible. It is the worst of the 5 guys I think that we're talking about here on this episode. But 7 of those 11 came in only 3 of his 13 games. So again, it brings me back to this point about consistency. And I'm not really sure what to draw from that, Mike. I know at least in the one game against, I think it was Wofford, he was trying to make some big plays with that. And that's more for me. I can excuse missed tackles if a guy's trying to make big plays. Yes, it becomes like a decision process. Maybe he shouldn't be trying to get big plays in that example. But these sorts of things seem coachable to me. There's another player that we'll talk about later where we're talking about maybe angles, the angles that they take, and in terms of like diving at feet. Yeah, I don't see some of those same problems with Knight as I do with some of those other guys. So yeah, the age thing. I'm going to end on that. It doesn't really bother me.
And I'm not going to harp on missed tackles because missed tackles are just running backs are more athletic and they're. Yep. So if we're going to harp on missed tackles, then we'll never draft. We'd never draft Zach Bond. Yep. We won't draft. I won't draft Patrick Queen, but we won't draft Levante David. Levante David missed 22 tackles last season. So missed tackles, I think, are just a thing for linebackers. And it's not a red flag, but okay, something, but it's not anything that I'm going to not anything I take off my draft board. Even Caden Ellis missed 22 tackles. Zach Bond missed 23 tackles, and he was in conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, and he just got paid. So missed tackles are something to note for sure, but I think it's a little bit more coachable, and I think it is something that does get cleaned up as somebody progresses in their career. Yeah,
and you mentioned the age thing. He's going to be 26 before the season starts. Doesn't really bother me. Really, at all. I thought on this a little bit early on. I think, if anything, being older than most of his teammates. You mentioned, those 3 years we didn't really do very much at all, and then the last 2 years he's been playing. So I think there has been some people out there who are confusing the fact that he is 26 with him having bags of experience. That's not necessarily the case, but I think him being a little older than his teammates has allowed him to develop those leadership qualities that we talked about earlier, that we kind of covet. So I think if he can bring that to the NFL, then that's a great thing. I just overall, in summary, think he's got the skill set to be someone who can not only find the field but also remain on the field on all 3 downs, because he's a pretty well-rounded player as these linebackers are concerned.
Yep, I agree, and like you said with the age, another advantage is that maybe doesn't have the miles on him or the tread like a running back does. He doesn't have the tread coming in. So, but yeah, like I said, Knight, my LB4.
I am proud to announce that Fast Draft now has an all-defense game called D-Up. That's right, fans of IDP finally have a real money best ball game that they can play. No more manually setting up leagues every time you want to do a draft. No. Now you can play for $10,000, $2,000 to first. Could draft up to 30 teams, all defense. And the best part, balanced scoring, tackles for loss, pass breakups. It all factors in. Just draft 6 defensive players, top 4 into your lineup every week. It's that easy. It's so easy that this isn't just for IDP people. If you love the NFL, then you'll love this game. And for the first time with Fast Draft, you can sweat both sides of the ball on Sunday. So use your host's promo code to get a $25 deposit match, and you'll love this D-Up contest because it's about time we got one.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to the guy who comes in at your number 3 then. He's had no shortage of buzz. Many people's number 1 at the position. Talk to us about Jihaad Campbell.
See, I think this is where we're going to get to start into like where they see rankings and people are like, why do you hate Jihaad Campbell? It's like, no, I don't hate him. He's a player. It just, everything is subjective. It just, he's a good player. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, Jihaad Campbell, my LB3. If you have him as your LB1, great. That's fine. I'm not going to talk you out. That's one of the great things about these rankings and these evaluations. I'm not going to sit here and call anybody a moron for having Campbell as their LB1. But he advanced well, progressed well. You saw steady progression from, he had a limited role as a true freshman in 22, primary special teams contributor. He just saw 12 defensive snaps, but in 23, 13 games, started 8, and then again his breakout year last season. First team All SEC honors, second team All American. Career snaps again, fewer snaps than even Demetrius Knight, just over 1,300. but had 735 snaps this past season, 15.9% tackle rate. So love the tackle production, 12 tackles for loss. So he was really, again, a force in the backfield, and really had a really good combine, even though he didn't do any of the agility numbers, a 4.5, 240 and a 1.58 split. So the dude has consistent speed throughout throughout the play. I think he adjusted to the SEC quickly. I mean, SEC is about as pro ready as you can get when you're looking at some of these prospects. So I think I wrote a 12.4% tackle rate, but I think I meant I think I might have meant pressure rate. But anyway, I think he had a decent pressure rate over 532 snaps. But the breakout season, put it all together. Okay, I'm gonna have to look at my article. But anyway, he had a 20.2 pressure rate and 5 sacks. So definitely has prowess, has the makeups of a really good pass rushing linebacker, off-ball linebacker. When you look at his overall strengths, definitely has the athleticism and the speed. It's there. Again, 4.5, 240, a 10-foot, 7-inch broad jump, elite explosiveness, range, sideline to sideline threat, can run down ball carriers. He had multiple roles really in Alabama, that versatility. He can blitz, he can cover, stop the run, really good flexibility. Tackle efficiency. So we talk about tackling efficiency, 7.3% missed tackle rate. So I think he's a sure tackler, doesn't really miss, and he finishes off the ball carrier. His above average in zone, good eye discipline, had an 80.1 coverage grade from PFF. And that did rank him among the top 20 off-ball linebackers. He does a really good job of closing passing windows. So physical tools, 6'3", 244 long arms, that prototypical frame for an off-ball linebacker, really good length and a motor. Some of the, run defense discipline was a little shaky. I think that, again, area of improvement. I think that's coachable of someone of his talent level. Block shedding, his length helps, but some of his stack and shed technique, I think, is still developing. And I did notice he was still getting stuck on blocks a little bit more than I want to see. But effective as a blitzer, good speed and bend, but sometimes just doesn't have a pass rush plan. If that's what his primary assignment is on a particular play, really more relies on its athleticism rather than a true edge rushing technique. Zone awareness, effective in zone, but sometimes he'll abandon his area a little too early when the quarterback scrambles, can kind of leave openings, but again, refining those experience. And again, just 1,300, just a little over 1,300 total snaps as a full-time player. But when you watch his 24 tape, you see talent and you see a football player. So I'm not going to knock him for that. It's just, it is what it is. You can see he's a football player. Kid can play. Just needs to polish some of his run fits, his pass rush techniques. Does have that athletic profile with youth. I think he projects almost immediately as a 3-down linebacker in the right landing spot this year. But I don't doubt after a year in that 26 is when I think you can see him as like that 3-down full-time linebacker. I think he is a candidate to be probably the true off-ball linebacker off the board. So, I think his combine certainly solidified that. Draft capital could put him on the field immediately. I think one of the first 3 rookie linebackers off the board, in my view, and definitely still in the conversation as the rookie LB1. But dude's a football player, and he just needs to clean up some of those areas of improvement. But I really liked what I saw from Campbell.
That's a great breakdown, and we're in total sync on this one. I really like him too, Mike. Many of the reasons you said, size, length, athleticism, versatility. I'm not going to go into each of these in as much detail as I was planning on because you've kind of covered it. Yeah. But one thing I wanted to say is that there's a couple of guys who are versatile in this class, are they not? And I think with Campbell, the difference between him and maybe one of the other 2 guys who's not in your top 5 actually is that Campbell does what he does at a high level, whereas the other guy I'm talking about, Jalen Walker, I get they're not quite the same player. Although Campbell, did play a lot of reps at edge, on the edge in a handful of games. But the difference between the two is that Campbell does it at a high level, whereas Walker does it okay at an okay level. So yeah,
the production is there.
Yeah, the pad level, you mentioned it, I think, there in your breakdown. It is a bit of a concern. You could see that in I think it was a Georgia game. It's nothing I lose sleep over at this point. There's always going to be negatives, and if we're talking about pad level, then that's something I can kind of live with, hoping that is something that they iron out at the next level, with a bit of coaching. To an extent, he's got so many positives to his game, though, Campbell, that things like pad level, I am more willing to overlook them than if it was like one of many in the list of things that he doesn't do well.
Yep.
It's really tough projecting how these linebackers are going to do at the next level, isn't it? Especially for someone like me who, as I said earlier on, doesn't really have many my guys. But with Campbell, I feel a lot more comfortable in him, in his abilities, that he can translate at the next level. And the reason for that is not only what he did in 2024, but as you mentioned, that progression from 2023. I love seeing these guys who have shown progression because, Mike, as we talk about what the ceiling could be for these guys, knowing that they have the potential to improve and to keep improving is huge. It's almost everything.
Yeah, you do. In addition, you want to see a good season. Obviously, you want to see production, but you do want to see. Okay, he played. He was a true freshman in this year. Played 8 games. This production. All right, next year, sophomore year, play 10 games. Production. You want to see that steady climb. Sometimes that red flag, like I think there was one linebacker. I don't remember if maybe if it was a linebacker, maybe it was even an edge rusher, but he had a little bit of a dip in production. But you kind of go into like, okay, maybe it was a scheme fit. Maybe his responsibilities change from year to year. So, you just got to kind of take that into consideration. But you definitely want to see, for me, when looking at these linebackers, I want to see production. That is kind of paramount for me when looking at these. I want to see tackle rates. The guy said, I think even last year when I was talking to when I was on with them last year, they were like the theme was tackle rate, a high tackle rate. So that's what I want to see, and we need tackle production out of our linebackers.
Yeah. And in terms of Campbell's progression, before we move on, it was almost in every area. From what I could see, which was really, really good to see and really encouraging. It just gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling in, as I say, being confident that he can become the player that he thought he could become. Right. So, look, Mike, let's chat about our next guy. This one may come as a shock to anyone who hasn't already read your article. Tell us who's in your number 2 spot and why.
I haven't waned on this, and Jay Higgins is my number 2. The first thing that is gonna stand out when you scroll through the article after you get through my number 1 is his RAS is redder than my term papers in high school. His original RAS, I think, was in the mid 1s.
Yeah.
Luckily, he did some agility drills, but that brought his RAS up to a 3.34. But the red, the red is going to be, again, it's going to stick out like the Kenny Rogers Roasters episode of Seinfeld when Jerry opens the apartment to Kramer, it gets flashed with the red, and it's like, what's going on? And then you're like, oh, yeah, the red. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, his athletic profile is going to stick out like a sore thumb. Fully aware, but he's in the Iowa program has produced decent linebackers. He broke out as a starter in 2023, 171 tackles, returned for a 5th year in 24, and again was a tackling machine in 2024. 124 tackles, a 16.4% tackle rate. Some of those big plays, those havoc plays, may not have been there. He had a sack. 3 TFLs, but he did have 4 interceptions, forced 2 fumbles, and had 5 defended passes. He was the only player from a major conference last year with 100+ tackles and 4 interceptions. So, strengths, high volume tackler, low missed tackle rate, 9.1%. 289 tackles over 2 seasons at Iowa, as a consistently solid tackler and wraps up. Again, football IQ, and just seems like a natural field general. Quarterback the defense last season, wore the dot. So that's one of the things I'm also looking for, wore the dot. Pre-snap recognition, really good play diagnosis. And I think he's a really good run and zone defender. I think his coverage ability, he's, again, good, really good shallow zones. He can mirror running backs. PFF credited him with a 91.5 coverage grade.
Mm-hmm.
And linebackers, usually when they're entering the league, that's usually that's usually one of the big knocks on their play, is their coverage ability. Also has some special teams value, which really doesn't which doesn't matter really in IDP. But I think in that end, he can contribute on special teams and show that he can play or show some value. And again, leadership, 4-time captain, tough professional. He earned Iowa's Golden Gavel Award for being media savvy. So I think he knows how to play the game. But obviously, weakness area of improvement. And I don't know if this is going to be improvement, but obviously his athleticism is going to stand out. Some of that elite lateral agility, some of that burst, when he's in some of those situations with some pass catchers, quicker pass catchers and tight ends. And again, his 40-yard dash isn't going to turn heads, but some of that speed didn't even translate on tape. Like when he ran the 40, I was expecting a high 4.6, low to mid 4.7. So the 4.8 was a bit of a surprise, but even watching the 40, it looked like he was running hurt. Like he looked like he was, I don't know if he was injured, but he looked like he was favoring something. His agent should have just told him, dude, don't run the 40. I don't.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I think his agent really did him any favors by by allowing him to run the 40. But again, some size concerns, shorter arms, kind of that stack and shed from linemen, and again, average athleticism and range. Kind of might be suited maybe for that weak side, that right side of the field where he's not getting blocked up by tight ends, or maybe some of the not getting blocked up as consistently. Sometimes will also over pursuit. I think he has an eagerness to go downhill, but kind of leads to some false steps, overrunning plays, maybe exposing gaps against those misdirection or run options. So I think he still projects as a high floor mid-round prospect. I think you'll probably see him now. I mean, it would not surprise me if he went undrafted based on his athleticism, but after watching him first, I watched him first before the combine, so I can see a football player. His PFF scores show me a football player, a guy who can play.
Yep.
I mean, he doesn't possess some of those elite physical traits of a day one pick, but he's got the production, some of those intangibles that I think can put him on an NFL roster. The production, the tape, the PFF still grades confirm it to me. I think he did make up some of that ground, like I said, with a good agility, with a good performance in the agility drill. Mm-hmm. So he can move around. He's agile. I think he is more, I guess you can say, tailor-made for like a 4-3 base. I think he if he's protected by a good front four that can keep him clean, that can plug gaps and open up some of those gaps, allow his instincts and his tackling to shine. I think that'll help him. I think I've seen a lot of guys do compare him to maybe a Jack Campbell, but I do think he reminds me a little bit more of Josey Jewell, a smart, productive linebacker who doesn't have a whole lot of athleticism, but has the smarts to make plays. So, I mean, just in that end, I think that's why I have Higgins as my LB2. Just a good, smart, productive linebacker.
Yeah, I'm conflicted for the reasons you brought up there, right? Because when you look down the list of kind of things that he ticks off well, it's a long list. It's a long list of things that he does very well. That athleticism, that it's not the be all and end all. No. 4.82 is worryingly slow. It was the last among the linebackers at the combine, and it then surprised me a little bit. Not necessarily, as you said there, that he ran slowly, but how slowly he ran. But it also then surprised me his three cone was the best amongst all linebackers. But there's something to read into that. This is for me, Mike, one of those situations where, as we talked about off air, where we stand on tape versus testing really gets challenged. And for me, testing numbers, athletic numbers are a modifier, right? Yeah. So this, Mike, is one of those situations where, where we stand on tape versus testing really does get challenged. And for me, while testing numbers are just a modifier of what we see on the field, and while I did expect a slow time, his shortcomings athletically are still a big worry. And to be honest, it's more of a modifier than I wanted it to be in his case, because as you said, he's a really good player. I might overlook some of this, though, I will say, if he gets a soft landing spot, because where he goes in the draft, and not only that, where he's taken relative to other linebackers, could sway me a little bit. I just hope that his testing numbers don't drop him to, as you said there, potentially becoming an undrafted guy. I don't think that's going to be the case.
I don't think so either, but it wouldn't surprise me if he went undrafted. But if he goes undrafted, I think a team is I think a team is getting a steal. I really like what I saw against Ohio State, but no, like I said, I'm glad I watched him before his combine.
Yeah.
Because
okay.
if I saw him, if I ended up watching him post combine, I might have been swayed, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but like I said, I'm glad I saw him before the combine. I will fully admit the combine, isn't great, but I did just kind of go back and watch. I'm like, no, I see this is a good angle here. The quickest way to point A and point B is a straight line. He kind of takes a straight line, and that's really what you need to do. Yeah. So, but no, I hear it. I hear what you're saying for sure. But
to revisit that point that we made, and I think it's worth reiterating because it is an important one. Straight line speed, 40-yard dash is not the most important drill for these linebackers, and we can't overlook how well he did do in the shuttle and the three cone and the shuttle. So the three cone, he was the best.
Yeah, three cone was a 7. Yeah, it was a 7.
Shuttle was fourth amongst all linebackers. So he's got that short area quickness, and that's something that we really value. So these things might work in his favor. We'll have to wait and see. But he has a lot of positives to his game, and it's almost a shame that he doesn't have at least average level athleticism or tested average, if you like. So anyway, let's move on. Last but not least, tell us who your top-ranked linebacker is in this class.
Carson Schwesinger from UCLA. I'll be honest, I had Higgins as my LB1. But like the Big Lebowski, like the dude looking for Bunny and Big Lebowski, new information came to light. So I watched a little bit more tape on him, and it put him over the edge for me when it comes to the linebacker, because there were some plays, I'll fully admit, I like Jay Higgins, but there were some plays that Schwesinger has made that there's just absolutely no way Jay Higgins is going to make. I am not going to allow my Jay Higgins blinders to that didn't happen. Schwesinger made some plays that Higgins wouldn't make. I fully admitted there. But he started off a special teams contributor. I think he earned a scholarship before redshirt year, but had limited snaps. He had limited defensive snaps over his first 3 seasons, 27 total tackles, but then just like a house on fire in 24. First year starter, 705 snaps, 136 tackles with a 19.3% tackle rate, 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, and 2 picks. He led the Big Ten in tackles, but what I really liked out of Schwesinger, what you're sometimes not seeing with some of these high productive linebackers, is some of these linebackers you're seeing a close to a 1-to-1 solo to assist ratio. Schwesinger had a near 2-to-1 solo to assist ratio, so he's getting to the ball before anybody else. And he's an efficient tackler. Given his tackle volume, he had a 7.6% missed tackle rate an effective blitzer with an 88.5 pass rush grade. So just, again, an overall productive, instinctual linebacker. And again, that solo to assist rate, just like that popped off. That popped off at me. Really good at athleticism and range. He's fluid. He's an incendiary athlete with really good sideline to sideline speed. Covers ground quickly. He's a threat in pursuit, and he'll chase down plays. He's just not going to give up on a play and will chase down. Fluid hips, smooth transition and coverage. I think he kind of, he's really decent and he's good in zone and man. Did a really good job of shadowing running backs and tight ends. Good instincts against the run, despite that limited starting experience. Displays really sharp play recognition. Patient, but quick and proactive, mirrors ball carriers, and meets the runners within the hole, and also has that special teams value. Some of the weaknesses, areas improvement, play strength. He can get washed out of plays if he's engaged directly. He's just about at the ideal weight, but again, will sometimes get washed out a little bit. And that block disengagement, lacks a real refined move to escape blocks consistently. He'll rely on his speed and angles, which are elite. So, I mean, obviously 136 tackles, 90 solos, but it's that hand usage and the refined counters to kind of disengage. Occasionally bites on misdirections, overruns plays, very aggressive trigger. So just kind of occasionally bites on those plays. And again, we're talking experience, but 186 total snaps. So that sample size is limited. So obviously he's going to face a steep jump in competition, but playing at UCLA, had some good competition within, just within the conference he plays in. But I think he kind of, again, profiles better as a goodwill, but I think he can call the plays because he did wear the dot at UCLA. So I think he's one of those linebackers that can call the plays. I think where his athleticism and range will shine. But again, I think if he can be kept clean, I think that's gonna help him immensely. So maybe kind of a Tampa 2 cover 3 type scheme. But I mean, that 2024 season just showed me a really good athletic linebacker. Again, blend of athleticism, instincts, versatility. I'm hoping for a really good landing spot because right now, like I said, he's my LB1.
Right there with you. There's a lot to like here, isn't there? He's rangy, he's explosive. The lateral quickness is there. Haven't talked about that enough actually in talking about some of these guys, but with Schwesinger, it's there in abundance. He's got a really great awareness, almost to a fault sometimes, of everything that's going on around him. For a guy that's really only played 1 year, to have that level of an understanding of a defense and to show that in a really instinctual way, I think is really impressive. Never takes a play off, right?
No, he doesn't.
I just think if he becomes the guy that I've seen on tape, he's going to be an asset in pass defense as well, regardless of what they ask of him and regardless of what scheme he's asked to play in. You called him fluid in your breakdown there, Mike, and I'm glad that you did that. It's exactly what I see in him too. He's just a smoother athlete than some of the other guys we've talked about here. I struggle to see this hip tightness that some people talk about when they're talking about prospects, unless it's really evident. But when you watch a guy like Schwesinger, you can kind of see what it looks like when a guy is really got really good hips. He's really smooth. He's really fluid. You mentioned as well the inability to disengage from blocks, or the trouble that he has in that sense. Yeah, I see that too. I would like to, 242 is the heaviest of the guys we're talking about here.
Yep.
I would like to see some more of that. Sometimes his hand usage is pretty good, and sometimes it looks really poor.
Really bad.
It's quite, again, there's like a real disparity between the two. What I will say is excellent at making blockers miss, though. Using his athleticism. I do worry against those pro athletes who are a little bit more athletic, those blockers, whether, like you say, when they get their hands on him, he's going to have trouble disengaging a little more. So he is going to have to get better at taking on blocks head on when they are engaged. But it's a real joy to see how good he is at just making blockers almost completely miss at times. That's a real plus to his game, and maybe that's led to him then not having to develop the ability to disengage as much as he would have done had he found himself in a fight with those guys. So yeah, I've got a lot of optimism for what he can go on to do. Feels unfair to leave it on a negative, so I'll end on a point. Now, I meant to mention earlier, but I forgot, Mike. One of the takeaways I have with him is when you're watching a game and you aren't necessarily trying to watch him specifically, you can't help but take notice of him. He jumps off the page, and you're just drawn into watching him over everybody else. He just pops in a way that few others do. And I hate the word pops or pops off the screen, but it just happens with him. And I can't think of a better word right now.
Yep, I agree. Like I said, I was like, all right, I know it's only a 1 and 2, but Schwesinger is he's the top guy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just going back to, and I'll be saying the same point again, but one of the things I really cover is, and I think everyone's the same that does this analysis of linebackers, is their ability to play well in coverage, and that's just something where he really stands out. That keeps them on the field. That gets them on the field, and then
keeps them on the field, and it keeps them on the field. Yep, yeah, that's what'll get you a 3-down linebacker job. Is if you don't need to be Darrelle Revis.
Yep.
But you don't want to be, I don't know, Eli Apple, or you don't want to be, you don't want to be.
Let's go, J.C. Jackson and his year with the Chargers.
There you go. So, but no, you want to be able to hang, and you're going to allow catches, but are you going to be in position to not allow the yards after the catch? Are you going to be in position to just guy gets the ball and maybe gets a yard, but are you going to be able to make the stops when it matters?
And that's something that's a common thread that runs through each of the 5 guys we talked about here tonight. They've all demonstrated a proficiency in coverage. Yes, there might be questions over their ability to, over their athleticism and their ability to hang with faster, shiftier players at the next level. But at least so far, so good in terms of how they've looked as coverage guys. So with that, let's do a quick recap of the top 5 then, Mike. You had Dolac at 5, Knight at 4, Campbell at 3, Higgins at 2, and Schwesinger at 1. And I think major props to both of us for not mispronouncing his name at any point in the last half hour. So major kudos to us. But Mike, look, before I let you go,
yes,
I want to entice people into reading your excellent linebacker article. You know that. But I want to end this episode by preempting what I think is going to be the question a lot of our listeners have. They're going to want to know the answer to this one. So I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but very quickly, give us the headline reason why Jalon Walker is not in your top 5, because he is being projected to go as an early first-round pick.
I have watched Jalon Walker probably more than any other player, because I keep asking myself, am I missing something here? I first watched him as an edge, and I'm like, I don't see anything. I don't see anything here. Then I saw, then I looked at his defensive snap breakdown. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll now watch him as an off-ball linebacker. And I watch him as an off-ball linebacker. And again, I didn't see any of the, as to use your cringy word, I didn't see anything really pop. Like Carson Schwesinger pop for, I'm like, okay, I see some plays. Higgins made some plays that caught me. Dolac, Knight, Campbell, even a few of the players outside of my top 5 have showed me something. So, I mean, not to get into it, he's a good football player. There's no doubt he's a good football player, but I don't see a top 5, and I just don't see a top 10 player, because when you see Jalon Walker get mocked in the top 10, you're thinking Luke Kuechly. That's what I immediately go to. I'll immediately go to someone like Luke Kuechly. And I don't see Luke Kuechly.
Okay.
And this is a little bit
a tough fit. It's a tough fit, isn't it?
This might be a little bit hyperbole, but it's like, I think people are just watching his Texas tape and then like, yep, elite. But again, good football player. I'll let my reasoning speak for, I'll let my reasoning kind of speak on more why, but no, I do not have, and I think everybody who goes to the article will probably be interested. It will probably be surprised where I have him, but I do not have him in my top 5.
There you have it. For more on Walker, Mike gave you a little bit too much there because he's a very generous guy, but for more on Walker and all the players we've covered today, and many more, in fact, go and check out Mike's rookie linebacker article on the IDPshow.com. It not only has his top 10, as he said earlier on, It has a full breakdown of 17 linebackers in this class. I promise you it's going to be one of the best, most important articles you read this off-season. But Mike, that's not the only rookie article you've done lately, is it? I don't know where you get the time, but you tell the good people about all the other amazing IDP content you've been producing recently and anything else you've got planned in the coming weeks.
Sure. So all of my pre-draft ranking articles are up at the IDP show. Also, just my Couch Scouts All 22 series, where I looked at all of these guys before the combine. So all of the guys that I've written up from the edge position, linebacker, defensive back, the Couch Scouts All 22 was a pre-combine evaluation. So the pre-draft is post-combine. So all of those are out right now. Free agency is just about wrapping up. So I'll be looking at some of the defensive coaching changes for the AFC and NFC. And then I actually have some stuff over at my personal Substack, MikeWoellert.substack, where I just looked at some of the players. I've written profiles on some of the players that I haven't written up at the IDP show. So please go ahead and subscribe. I'd be grateful if you joined as a paid subscriber. So, but continue to add some of those IDP profiles at my own personal Substack there at MikeWoellert.substack.com. But as usual, I think we do have our IDP show draft guide around the corner. So April will be busy with projections, breakout sleepers, and all of that good stuff as we head into the later part of the spring.
Sounds like fun. Everyone listening, please do yourself a favor and your fantasy teams a favor as well, for that matter, and go and check out Mike's stuff. Mike, that is us done. I've loved having you on again, dude. It's always fun, but more than that, it's really cool to hear your thoughts on this stuff. I've been listening to you for a long time, since what was the name of the Cleveland Browns themed, in terms of the icon at least, show that you had? Was it Mic'd Up?
Yes.
Yes, I've been listening to you for many years now. To have you on the show is just an absolute pleasure. So yeah, I don't know about you as well, dude, but to break down these linebackers, to break down any rookies, kind of just gets me even more excited for the draft than I was before. So
yeah, fun class. Like I said, this was a fun class to evaluate. It kind of caught me by surprise as I went into them. So hopefully my article is kind of against consensus, and there's some guys that maybe you didn't realize that, okay, maybe I'll have this guy on my radar. So as long as there's one or two guys that you didn't realize were on your radar, then I've done my job. So it was again really fun athletic class.
All righty. Well, look, thanks as always to everyone else who has tuned in. I'm back with another episode of the IDP After Show the week after next, where I'll continue our draft series by looking at the rookie defensive linemen. In the meantime, I think Josh, Adam, and Bob will be bringing you the updated rookie mock next week on the IDP Show, so make sure to check that out too. Until then, have fun out there.
This was the IDP After Show.